Now, the National Identification Authority says it stands by its decision to make the birth certificate, passport and Ghana Post GPS mandatory documents in the mass registration process for the Ghana card. This comes after some citizens appealed to the authority to revise required documents needed to acquire the Ghana card. We will hear from the Public Relations Officer for the NIA shortly, but first, Nancy Emefa-Dwadosi visited some centers in Accra and now reports.
It is 8 a.m. at the Presbyterian Church at Abosokine in Accra. 15 people had queued up eager to be registered so they could secure a national identification card. However, when the process started, many of the people could not be registered because they did not provide the necessary document. Others said they did not own smartphones and therefore could not provide the Ghana Post GPS address.
I haven't been able to register because I do not have any of the documents required. I only have my voter ID.
I
am angry because they tell us we cannot use our voter ID. They talk about some GPS. I don't even know what it is. I want government to look at this.
Ghana Post me ko share ne what me amama timi aba be Ghana card. Etimi kakra me kan say monwo ne mamman na sa ID card mpo na ebe yusu a na yentimi yusu
ni ba I
came here to register and they demanded my birth certificate. I have never owned one. They wouldn't even take my voter ID and other documents. There are too many requirements and I would urge the president to take a look at it again.
At the North Kaneshie Anglican Church, the registration exercise was ongoing. Some people were waiting to undergo biometric verification. I met Dixon and Ikia. Months ago, they did not have neither the birth certificate nor the Ghana Post GPS, but they had succeeded in securing the necessary documents.
I haven't been
national identification card. I have my birth certificate and my Ghana Post GPS. Months ago, I didn't have them, but I decided to get them so that it would enable me undergo this exercise.
I have only the birth set.
You have your Ghana Post GPS?
Yeah, I have it.
So when did you get all of these?
I had this about last year, September. That's the this one. I was having some, but they said it was not in the system, so I have to do another one. So I did.
Okay. And the Ghana Post GPS, all of them, when did you do it and why did you take the steps?
The Ghana Post GPS, when they started the Ghana Post GPS, when they brought it into the system, then I did that.
For those in Greater Accra, this exercise is expected to end on July 6.
Well, the Public Relations Officer for the NIA, Francis Balndetti, however, says the documents required are critical, adding they are mandated by law.
We are a creature of statutes. I mean, it's the law that set us up, and we also have a mandate to execute. It's also the same law. So we cannot deviate from what the law tells us to do. Now, it's important to understand that this particular exercise is about a national identity register. And the law requires that that register must be populated with personal information of Ghanaians living in Ghana and abroad and foreigners who are legally resident in the country. To do that, you must start with a mass registration exercise. The requirements set out in the law is one, a birth certificate or a passport, a valid passport, or a certificate of acquired citizenship. I mean, there are some foreigners who have gone through the legal process to become Ghanaians. They would have to bring a certificate of naturalization or registration. Okay. Now, for those who do not have these, I mean, without these, you cannot register, even if you have the SNET ID card or the voter ID card or those other cards.
But that's the point that these people raise, for example.
So I need to explain that for those who do not have the requirements, the law has made provision. Because the law is mindful of the fact that not everybody has the documentation. So a relative who has already registered and been issued with a card can vouch for you under oath. What would urge people to do is that Ghana Post has recruited some NAPCO officials to go around and help people generate the address. They also have made their various post offices in the districts and in the regions, they've trained them to help people generate the address. Some of our officials, I mean, they also have been given some knowledge on how to help people generate the address.
Okay. Away from that, the creation of new constituencies is not up for consideration, at least not now. That's according to Chairperson of the Electoral Commission, Jean Mensah, who says the matter is not on its agenda currently. Her comments are in reaction to claims by First Deputy Minority Chief Whip Ahmed Ibrahim, who says the minority has credible information which suggests the EC intends increasing the number of parliamentarians to 300. We will hear from the EC boss shortly, but first listen to the First Deputy Minority Chief Whip who told the media last week that their information suggests about 17 constituencies will be created in the Ashanti region alone.
NDC should not think that Nana Addo is thinking about free and fair elections. All he's thinking about is rigging. All he's thinking about is rigging. And it's as clear as that. Parliament, look at the chamber. Even 275, there is no space. And you are thinking of creating an additional 25 seats. And that is the assignment he has given to this EC. Very soon there will be a declaration, you will hear. The EC will come that he's coming to create additional 25 seats. That is MPP agenda. Very soon it will be out. They are going to create Bimla into Bimla South, Bimla North. They are going to create, I can mention those areas to you. Create more constituencies in Ashanti region. They are going to create about 17 constituencies in Ashanti region. Clear gerrymandering. That's all. Ghanaians need to pray.
So that was the First Deputy Minority Chief Whip Ahmed Ibrahim claiming the Commission is preparing to create additional 25 constituencies, which will bring the number to 300. But when she appeared before Parliament's Public Accounts Committee earlier Monday, EC Chairperson Jean Mensah said the minority's claim was untrue.
Total lie. It's not come up. I'm sure that nothing stops the Commission from considering or creating new constituencies. And this is an issue that is on our agenda, but we've seen reports in the public domain, and we can say for a fact that this is not coming from the Commission. The Commission has not met to consider this, although this is an issue on its agenda and it's a mandate of the Commission. But those figures and the information put out there is not true. And we ask the public to disregard it.
Is that being considered?
Definitely. I mean, I think the Commission has the right to look at the creation of new constituencies. And when we talk about that, to assess our constituencies. So it's not, a lot of work goes into it. And it's something that we are applying a lot of work, bringing to bear, good practices and best practices. So it's not to say you are just creating constituencies. I think we need to carefully consider this and look at this carefully.
Do you think there's a need for such a question?
When the time comes, when we've done our assessments, we would know. When we've done the assessments, because you find certain constituencies have very large numbers, some have small. So these are things that you have to consider, but there's no rush. There's no rush. As I mentioned, this has not even come up. It's an issue on the agenda, but there is a mandate of the Commission, so it's always on the front burner. But to be honest, this has not even been discussed. And we are not looking at, it has nothing to do with the creation of new regions or so on. At the moment, we are busy setting up offices, and that is what is before us, and also preparing towards the conduct of the district level elections and the referendum. And these are things that occupy us. And so although the creation of new constituencies is a mandate of the commission, it's not something that is occupying us at the moment.
How are these preparations going? You talked about the preparations.
They are going well. They're going well.
So that's EC Chairperson Jean Mensah there. I'm joined in the studio now by my colleague Joseph Opoku-Gapor. He was our man in Parliament today as the EC boss appeared before the committee. You will recall the NDC had kicked against limiting the upcoming limited registration exercise to the district level. They wanted the process decentralized. Gapor joins me in the studio now. Now, Gapor, today that issue came up again in Parliament. What was the EC's position?
So, you know, the NDC in the statement they issued last week were asking that compared to previous situations, we should see where the registration is not actually done just in the district. But the EC boss is insisting that they've done that before ahead of the referendum in some of the areas where they did the referendum where the registration was limited to the district offices, and it went well, and that following the decision to introduce continuous registration where people walk into their offices and register, the pressure is not that much, and so they wouldn't exactly need situations where the registration needs to be done in other areas. So they are sticking by their decision to limit it to the district offices as they had indicated they were going to do.
I think the law mandates the Commission to prepare for the conduct of such registration exercises as it deems fit. And at this present time, the Commission is of the view that the exercises should be held in the district offices. Of course, if you are just the recent past, when we were conducting the referendum, the registration was held in the district offices, and there were no complaints. I haven't seen a Ghanaian coming to complain yet that the offices are far off. And indeed,
the NDC in a statement has raised questions about this.
Yes, but we
wondered if you want this enfranchised.
I do not believe so at all. Of course, the offices are open for the continuous registration for those who have lost their cards, whose cards have been defaced and so on. And day in, day out, our IGFs, our internally generated funds, our accounts are fat because we have people going on a daily basis to, replace, their lost cards and so on. And we haven't had complaints that, the district offices are too far.
So, Joseph, we also understand that the EC is undertaking some form of restructuring. They are deploying some of their staff. What can you tell us in terms of
well, she made the point that this is something that they do regularly, so it's nothing extraordinary, it's nothing special. It's part of the whole process when it comes to administering the Electoral Commission, and so no wild outcome should be expected as a result of this, and that those reading meanings into this are actually not exactly getting it entirely right. But she also addressed a second issue having to do with salaries of staff that have been outstanding, those who helped with the referendum for some months now. Right. She says the processes have begun, and by next week, the end of next week, they would have completed it, and the set payments would have been made for all those staff of the Electoral Commission. Oh, not staff, but part-time staff, exactly.
Okay. All right. Now, if you recall, last week there were unconfirmed reports that there was some form of a spat between the EC boss and NDC General Secretary Johnson Asiedu-Nketia at the latest IPAC meeting. Now, given that the 2020 elections is just a little over a year away and the party will undoubtedly be engaging with the Commission, there are some who have expressed worry about the growing acrimony between the EC boss and the NDC. Until now, we had only heard Mr. Johnson Asiedu-Nketia's account of what happened.
I asked, Madam, I'm aware that Parliament appropriated monies for the Commission to enable you undertake the registration exercise up to the electoral area level. And you projected some numbers that you were going to capture and all that. So that was where some representatives of IPAC started heckling her. Okay. And I was there. And in her long narration about the reason why she has decided to do this, that, she then mentioned that the registration kit, the look of the registration kit, the container, is similar to a portmanteau bag that is being carried by a bridegroom for a wedding. So I started laughing. Actually, it was, you know, a very laughable comment.
So you're laughing at that?
Yes, so I started laughing. Then she mentioned my name in her narration. That I said, Nketia, why are you making noise? Why are you making? I said, oh. So everybody in the house said that, but we haven't seen Asiedun Ketia speaking. And he said, but he's laughing. Well, if that is the case, madam, I'm complying. So I frowned my face now. I say, I'm trying to comply with the... so I frowned my face, and then some people started taking pictures, threatening to put them on Facebook. I said, well, if you put them there, I'll be compelled to explain why I have frowned my face.
Well, today, Jean Mensah denied reports of any exchanges, insisting there were others in the room who could confirm her account. Watch.
Not aware of any such incident. I am not aware of any such incident.
Is it a made-up story or something?
Well, in our view, and I'm sure there are others who attended the meeting, I'm sure they will be best placed to answer your question, but there was no incident.
So who's to be believed? Well, Joy News has secured a tape recording detailing what transpired in that particular meeting. Listen.
But you have to understand us. The parties ought to understand us in the interest of this country. Going for electoral area registration means that we would have to bring on board additional kids. Yes, this is a meeting. You can express your views thereafter. But I think that going for registration on the electoral area basis, and Mr. Asiedun Ketia, we gave you that respect when you were speaking, so we allow us to explain. You asked a question and we are answering you, so please allow us. You are making their side and obstructing the discussion.
I haven't said anything.
You were laughing.
So laughter interrupts me.
No, but when you were talking, we didn't. It's
Please,
like you are ridiculing us.
I beg you. Those who are making the noise, I have kept quiet. I'm not part of what is happening. If you have a personal problem against me, you may bring it up.
We do not have.
But please.
We do not have a problem against you.
I am here.
As I am speaking, I see you laughing.
So laughter and disruption, which in my view. So if I'm smiling, it means I cannot smile.
You are laughing.
So I cannot laugh.
Both.
So I cannot laugh.
Both. I think that we gave you
Madam, please.
If you start talking,
respect is end. If you put yourself in a respectable position, people will respect you.
Yes, and so
that's the advice I want. That's the advice I want. But address the issue. Look, the question I asked, I don't think that it solicited all the information you are bringing up. I'm asking you a simple question, and you go on delivering thesis.
Let us deliver a thesis. I think it's for the right good people of this country.
I'm sure you will end at some point for me to continue.
Yes,
so you proceed.
Yes, we will proceed.
And I heard the exchanges between the NDC General Secretary Johnson Asiedun Ketia and EC boss Jean Mensah at the last IPAC meeting. You're still watching Joy News Prime with me, Araba Kumsin. Still ahead, key suspect in Takoradi kidnapping standing trial for escaping from lawful custody, sentenced to 18 months, but residents of Takoradi are unhappy.
Police, the national security, all of them, these bodies should come together to find out. They should give us the final decision where the gas are. What we are waiting for is the gas.
Also in business, coalition of textile workers mount pressure on government to implement tax policies 4 months after amendment of the Excise Tax Stamp Act.
Tired of the street words, we are tired of the in-house meetings, the town hall meetings. We want them to act now. Give us the uniforms and we will print them. Give us whatever you want to give us, the tax stamp, and we will work.
Details coming up with Sandra Afeni. You're welcome back. Now, a Takoradi Magistrate Court in the Western Region has sentenced a suspect in the missing Takoradi girls case to 18 months in prison for escaping from lawful custody, I beg your pardon. Samuel Udotok Wills was found guilty of all 3 charges brought against him: escape from lawful custody, destroying public property, and resisting lawful arrest. He will serve the sentences concurrently. There's more in this report.
Samuel Uditek Wells was arrested at Kansawurudu, a suburb of Sekondi Takoradi in the Western region, on December 22, 2018, in connection with the 3 kidnapped girls. But 8 days later, the 28-year-old escaped from the Takoradi Central Police Cell on December 30, 2019. Police say he managed to cut the iron rod for ventilation in the cell and escaped. The 7 police officers on duty during the escape were directed by the police command in the region to reproduce the suspect within 10 days. Samuel Wells was recaptured at Nkrofo near Takoradi 5 days after his escape. In his sentencing, the judge, His Worship Michael Ampedu, found his testimony on how he escaped inconsistent. His substantive allegation of kidnapping remains under investigation, but residents of Takoradi are unhappy with how the kidnap case has been handled by the police.
They should come out and tell us they are dead, so that parents also will not come about to him there. The women in parliament to also come into this issue and help the parents of their children, because
when the incident happened, I'd be coming to court to listen to the side of the guy, but today he has been given a sentence that is 18 months. That is where he broke the jail. I think my problem is, let's go to the substantive issue. We are waiting for the girls, the 3 girls. I know them. I know the fair-colored one. I know her. So I'm pleading with the judiciary to speed the court to speed the case. All we are waiting for is to bring the girls back. I'm appealing to BNI, the Ghana Police, the National Security, all of them. These bodies should come together to find out. They should give us the final decision.
Meanwhile, almost 900 Ghanaians have signed an online petition to mount pressure on the Ghana Police Service to bring back the 3 kidnapped Takoradi girls. It has been almost 9 months since the first Takoradi girl, Priscilla Bintum, was kidnapped. The petition, led by Child Rights International, is asking Ghanaians to support the 3 families to demand the whereabouts of the girls. Here are Joy News. We urge you to support our campaign to bring back the Takoradi girls. Don't forget to tweet, Facebook, or inquire the status of the girls. Keep the conversation alive. Remember, the hashtag is Bring Back Our Tadi Girls. And staying on kidnapping, we do understand the President Akufo-Addo has been speaking to some civil society organizations today. That issue came up. My colleague Elton John Brobe joins me on the line with details. Elton, bring us up to speed on what happened at this meeting.
Yeah, so the meeting ended about an hour ago, and they spoke on a variety of issues. And the President actually responded to some of the issues that they brought. And this is the National Anti-Corruption Action Plan, which is the creation of Parliament. And they came to the President to, they were there to get answers on some issues that are already in the media and some national issues that require attention. And let me start from the kidnapping issue, because that is where you ended. The President spoke briefly on that particular matter, and for him, it is a worrying situation. And he says that something needs to be done about it, and he's determined to deal with it effectively. He will not mention some of the recent issues in the media, like, for example, the 3 girls that have been kidnapped in the Western Regional capital, Takoradi, and then the recent matters that have dominated media discussion. But he says that he's determined to root it out and to deal with it effectively. And one show of doing it is to restore the security agents to ensure that they're on top of their game in dealing with this, creeping phenomenon that appears to have resulted in fear among people who've come into contact with some of these issues in the media. So that's about it on the kidnapping issue. But a lot of issues came up: sanitation, the Ayawaso West Wogom, parliamentary by-election violence, that a commission was set up to investigate. I'm sure you're aware that a report was submitted to the President somewhere around March. A white paper on this particular report has yet to come on. The President took some time off to explain the reason why we are yet to see or listen to the recommendations of government. First of all, he condemned and described it as irresponsible, the leakage of the report in a section of the media. For him, his government is still studying the report, and until they are firm in their mind that they are ready to present the recommendations and indeed the white paper of government. They will not
rush Elton,
responding to issues.
Yeah, I'm sure we can continue that conversation, but we do also understand that earlier today, the presidency issued a statement regarding the resignation of a Minister of State at the presidency. What can you tell us about that?
So I'm told that there was actually a meeting between the affected minister and the president, and after the meeting, this statement came out. Let me just read to verbatim this statement signed by the Director of Communications, Eugene Ahem. And he says that President of the Republic, Nana Akufo-Addo, today, Monday, accepted the resignation from office of Honorable Roxton Bukari, the Minister of State at the Office of the Presidency. Now, this was after Honorable Roxton Bukari submitted his letter of resignation to the President on Monday, that's today, because he had taken note of the tape circulating in the media and had therefore taken the decision to resign in order not to allow the tape to disrupt the focus of government in delivering on its mandate. And the statement concludes by saying President Akufo-Addo accepted the resignation, and so for now we can say that Honorable Roxton Bukari is no longer part of the Akufo-Addo government.
All right, Elton, John Brobe is our presidential affairs correspondent, then bringing us details, including the resignation from office of Minister of State at the presidency, Roxton Bukari. There, you're watching Joy News Prime. Let's do some more news. Now, there is major progress on the militia disbandment talks as the governing MPP and opposition NDC agree to include other stakeholders and experts in the dialogue. You will recall this was a bone of contention between the NDC and President Akufo-Addo. This then played out heavily at the first meeting convened, almost threatening the progress of the dialogue. But thankfully today, the parties have agreed to include the security agencies, civil society organizations and religious bodies. Chairman of the committee, Nana SKB Asante, addressed the media after their meeting.
The National Peace Council met with key members of the two main political parties in Ghana, namely the National Democratic Congress, NDC, and the New Patriotic Party, NPP, as part of a process aimed at 1, disbanding vigilante groups operating within or for political purposes, 2, prohibiting the ownership, hiring, or utilization of such groups by the political parties or members thereof, 3, cooperating with state agencies and stakeholders in the total eradication of such groups or incidents of vigilantism in the country. After an open and exhaustive deliberation, the parties agreed on the immediate scope of the dialogue. In this regard, the parties agreed to commence a discussion on the elimination of vigilantism with other key stakeholders and experts. These stakeholders shall include representatives of civil society organizations, security agencies, and religious bodies.
Meanwhile, Chairman of the National Peace Council, Professor Emmanuel Asante, says the decision by President Akufo-Addo to legislate against political party militias does not make the dialogue by the two major parties irrelevant. Speaking ahead of today's meeting, he emphasized disbandment by law alone will not resolve the issue at hand.
The National Peace Council has been invited to submit comments on the Vigilantism and Related Offences Bill, and it intends to do so very soon. While we acknowledge the significance of the bill, we wish to stress that its passage and the mediation process are compatible. Whereas the bill provides for the mandatory provision of vigilantism in all its forms, our dialogue aims at the voluntary disbandment of vigilante groups by political parties. The proscription of vigilantism by statute can only be enhanced by voluntary action by political parties. Laws are there. We have examples to show Supreme Court had pronounced on some of these chieftaincy disputes, and yet the disputes were there until the people came together to talk Jojo to find peace. Let me, as I end, say that a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a step. I'm not under any illusion that sitting here will be able to deal with all issues pertaining to vigilantism in the country, but we need to take a step.
Chairman of the NDC, Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, agrees.
We are also not oblivious of the fact that the executive, through the president and attorney general, has introduced a bill to parliament to deal with this issue. But we are also of the conviction that this process should continue to its logical conclusion, because we know that bills can be passed, but it takes human beings to ensure that solutions are found to. So the bill itself and its passage will not be a panacea to the challenge that we are facing. What I believe we should do is to be open, frank, and honest in dealing with this situation. If we are able to do that, I believe that we can make a headway. If we approach it cosmetically, then of course, we will still one day come and find the situation devouring us.
And it's a wrap from me and all the team here at Joy News. That's it for Joy News Prime for today. But for more news, log on to myjoyonline.com. And coming up next is Hotline. Do stay.